Alright, so in today's video, we're doing another Warlock build. This time it is a Threadling spam or just overall ability spam build, and it is extremely fun. And one of the best parts about this build is that it has a lot of options. You're not restricted to a subclass. You can do this on two different subclasses. You can do this on Prismatic or Strand. And then weapon-wise, there's a lot of leeway. You can use a lot of different types of weapons in this build. The spam really just requires you to have something that is a strand weapon. And then for your exotic, you can go one of two ways. And again, this is not a must, but it does just improve the build. But you're going to need the Swarmer exotic legs or the class item with the Spirit of the Swarm perk, which is the same thing. Now, jumping right into this video, I'm going to pull up my artifact on screen right now for you guys to see, so that if you want to real quick just copy my exact artifact, you can do that. Again, these things are not a must, but they're little things that just improve the build and add to it. All right, so right off the bat, jumping into the subclass, I'm personally using Prismatic, but like I said in the beginning of the video, you could also just go straight Strand if you wanted to, but I do think the ability spam is a lot more fun with Prismatic, so I do recommend it. But let's go ahead and jump right into the super. I was using Needlestorm in this video, as you guys can see. But it doesn't matter what super you use. You could use whatever you want. I was kind of just testing different supers. Needlestorm is honestly not that great, but I don't know. It's okay. But obviously the strongest super here is Song of Flame. Is probably the one that I would highly recommend, but it does have the slowest cooldown. If you wanted to go with super spam, like basically having more supers more often, you could go with Storm Trance or Winter's Wrath. Winter's Wrath being the worst of all the supers here. But like I said, you would get them a lot more frequently because they're roaming supers. I know technically Song of Flame is a roaming super, but Bungie doesn't code it that way because I think they just think it's too strong. So you will not get it quickly with kills and stuff like that. The other two will be significantly faster. And then just for single target damage, obviously Nova Bomb would be the strongest. But there's annoyances with Nova Bomb, like it tracking to the wrong enemy or blocking teammates' damage, stuff like that. So yeah, but anyways, feel free to use whatever you want here. It doesn't really matter. So the very first, most really important part of this build is Phoenix Dive. You should definitely rock Phoenix Dive, and I'll explain why, because it matches with one of the aspects, which is Weaver's Call, which every time you activate your class ability, you weave 3 Threadlings and deploy any Threadlings you have perched. Targets defeated by strand damage have a chance to generate a perched Threadling, right? So this is part of the build. This is a huge part of the, like I said, infinite spam Threadling build. And then Phoenix Dive, you just get super quickly, a lot more quicker than the Healing Rift or an Empowering Rift. So you're just able to spam this more often. And then for melee, you definitely want to go Arcane Needle here. Because you get 3 of them, it's pretty much the only melee you really ever want to use with most Prismatic builds, because it allows you to have 3, which is huge, more charges. And also, you get some Unraveling, which is a big part of this build. And I'll go into that a little bit later. It has to do with the artifact and everything. And then obviously Grenade, Threadling Grenade, because again, this is a Threadling spam build. So everything that can be Threadlings, you just want as much as possible. So like I said, Threadling Grenade, Threadling Aspect. And then the other aspect that you want to have here is Devour. This is extremely important because Devour allows you to just spam abilities more often, because once you proc Devour, any kills after that reduce, cooldowns of all of your abilities. So once you've proc Devour by getting a melee kill or getting a Threadling kill, any kind of damage, any kills, so abilities, supers, weapons, just, give you your abilities quicker. So this is a huge part of this build, and it's why Prismatic is significantly stronger than straight up Strand, because Strand does not have Devour. Now for my fragments, the very first one is Facet of Hope. This is very important. While you have an elemental buff, your class ability regens more quickly. So any form of elemental buff is just going to be giving you your Phoenix Dive faster, which is awesome. And it's very easy to have an elemental buff with this build because of Devour and Unraveling Rounds and Woven Mail. There's just a lot. And you could really add to this if you wanted to by using bolt charge stuff, because there's lots of bolt charge weapons, which I was not doing in this video, but you could, and it would be super beneficial. Or you could use void weapons with this seasonal artifact, and you could use the destabilizing rounds and the and volatile rounds and stuff like that. But anyways, moving on to the next fragment, we have Facet of Awakening. Rapidly defeating targets with light or dark damage or super final blows generates an elemental pickup of the matching damage type. So big reason to why to use this is because you're just going to be making more tangles, which is part of your threadling build, because when you throw or break the tangles, you're making more threadlings, so this is very important. Next fragment is Facet of Balance. Rapidly defeating targets with light damage grants melee energy. Rapidly defeating targets with darkness damage grants grenade energy. So again, it just adds to the ability spam. So whether you're using your strand weapon or if you have a light weapon, obviously a lot of the damage in this build is going to be darkness because you're using a strand weapon and all darkness abilities. So you're going to be making your grenades a lot more frequently than your melee, which is good because, again, this is a threadling build, but the melee is still important and still good. So you will obviously most likely have an energy weapon, which will be light because all energy weapons are light. And then there you go. You can build your melee with that. Now, with this fragment, this was just a personal thing. Facet of Defiance. Finishers create a detonation that either jolts, scorches, slows, severs, or makes targets volatile based on the damage type of your equipped super. I was using this for the recovery. I can't show it right now because this stupid thing keeps going down, but I was using this specifically for the recovery because on Warlock, if you did not know this, recovery is pretty important because it has to do with how quickly your class ability recharges. So you want as much recovery as possible. And lastly, Facet of Honor. Collecting an elemental pickup or destroying a tangle grants Transcendence energy on the same type. So I think I was using this for the strength as well, but again, I'm going to be collecting elemental pickups and destroying tangles. Like, that's part of this build, so it's just free Transcendence energy constantly, which again adds to the spam of the build, because when you proc Transcendence, you know, you get a new grenade, but you get infinite melee charges, and they constantly are building and recharging quicker, so it just adds to the build. So now that I've shown off my subclass, let's go ahead and jump into the specific artifact perks that I am using. And I'm really only going to go over the ones that are important to this build. So I already showed off my artifact at the very beginning of the video, so if you wanted to just copy it, you can. But some of this is not specific to the Threadling spam, which is what I want to focus on right now. So the very first artifact mod that is important to the spam is in the second column, 5 down, which is called Unraveling Orbs. Picking up an Orb of Power or a Tangle grants Strand Weapon Unraveling rounds. And then the boost is Strand Weapons deal increased damage to Strand debuffed targets. So this is really important because obviously I'm making Tangles like crazy. So it's just free Unraveling rounds. Unraveling rounds is now a debuffed thing, right? So I'm just going to be doing even more increased damage with my Strand Weapons. So in my case, my Dungeon Trace Rifle. Also, I will be picking up Orbs of Power because I will be using Siphon mods, which I will discuss later when I show off my armor. But you should always be using Siphon mods. They're very important. Next up, again in the second column, all the way down at the very bottom, Vile Weave. Targets hit by your Tangles are severed. Reduce Tangle cooldown by picking one up. So again, just makes it so you're making more Tangles, like faster. And you are severing enemies, which I didn't go super hard into this build, but you could. Severing just makes it so that enemies are doing reduced damage to you. So it's just another form of damage reduction. In my opinion, you don't really need it in this build because you have Devour, which means you're constantly healing. You also have Woven Mail, which is absolutely broken and just makes you even tankier. And then if you're like most people in the Destiny community, you're already probably rocking 100 resilience. So you're almost unkillable, and as you probably have seen in this video, it's very hard to die. So, yeah. Now, the next mod that I'm using is in the third column called Elemental Siphon. Rapid final blows with a kinetic weapon or a weapon matching your equipped super. Create an elemental pickup that matches your equipped super. Elemental pickups grant matching super energy when they are collected. So, again, I was using the Strand Trace Rifle, and I was also playing with the Strand Super. So I was making more Tangles more often and getting my super even more often with the boost active. Next artifact mod that I was using is in the fourth column called Horde Shuttle. Damaging unraveled targets with a weapon occasionally spawns a Threadling. The boost, Threadlings sever targets that they damage. So again, you are already unraveling everything with this build. You should always have unraveled rounds. Now you're spawning more Threadlings because of that, and then the boost is making the Threadlings sever targets, so things that now, like I said before, that you didn't really need to go into sever hard, this is why. Everything should be getting hit by Threadlings, everything should be doing reduced damage to you, and you have Devour, and you have woven mail, you should be very unkillable. And then again, fourth column, harsh refraction. Trace rifles do more damage to targets afflicted by elemental debuffs, matching their elemental type. So again, unraveling rounds are everywhere. You should be having them at all times. So this just adds to that if you're using a trace rifle. And then the next artifact mod is in the final column, Limit Break. Casting a super while you're critically wounded or have an elemental buff, matching your super element grants a period of increased super damage. Limit Break is just so free. It's just extra damage this season with any super. So I highly recommend using it pretty much at all times. It's just fun. And you can either be really weak or you can just have Woven Mail active, which is, again, really easy with this. You should always have Woven Mail with this build because the very last mod, to Shreds. Dealing sustained damage to severed targets unravels them. Defeating a severed target creates a hotspot or strand energy, granting woven mail to nearby allies for a short duration. Boost unraveling projectiles deal increased damage. These deal further increased damage to severed targets. So again, it just makes you even more broken with more unraveling, with more woven mail, and more severed. So yeah, I mean, that's the artifact. And as you can see, it's very strand heavy. There's a couple other things that I'm using, but like I said, they don't really matter. Just personal preference. But yeah, those are the things I recommend for the artifact. Now, I've been talking about what I've been using, but I haven't shown it. So let's go ahead and discuss what weapons I was using in this video. So like I said before, I've been using the Dungeon Trace Unsworn. The role I have is Shoot to Loot Detonator Beam. It's just really fun. I like Shoot to Loot. It's just a fun perk to just be able to shoot, you know, ammo anywhere, automatically reload like a rocket or something like that, or your Trace Rifle immediately by shooting more special. And Detonator Beam is just a fun damage perk. I enjoy it. And like I said, the main reason why I'm using this is because it's a Trace Rifle season. I'm using Trace Rifle mods, and it's Strand plus the Subjugator perk in the Origin trait, which is also just a little bit of a buff that you get from using that one artifact mod. Now for my energy, I've been using Lord of Wolves. I've been doing this a lot lately. Lord of Wolves is just in a really strong spot right now, and I don't know if it's going to continue after this season. I could see maybe it receiving a little bit of a nerf from Bungie. But this is basically my heavy weapon in a sense, quotation marks. This is what I use for like chunky enemies or bosses because it hits like a truck. And then in this video, I was using the other half just to move around quicker. But you could use anything here. You could use a machine gun, strand machine gun for more strand stuff if you did have a chance of running out of your... if you're using double special like me, it's nice having machine gun as basically another primary because when you use heavy ammo, you make special. When you use special ammo, you make heavy. You can make same ammo, it's just more rare. It's more basically Bungie just has a system that allows you to make ammo faster when you're using opposites. And you could also use a strand rocket launcher like Sinisher, which is the rocket from Vanguard right now. And you could do, I made a video of it a little bit ago, like a week ago or so, about the infinite rocket. You could do that with this build if you really wanted to, where you could use the artifact mod that makes you free heavy when you use a legendary rocket and get multi-kills. You could do that here as well, which I sometimes was doing. But yeah, those are my weapons. Now moving on to my armor, I'm going to hop right into my exotic first, which in this video, I was using the class item with Necrotic and Swarm, which was, I got really lucky and ended up just getting this randomly from Zur, I think a week or two ago, the last time he sold the exotic class item. But yeah, so I got really lucky and got this. And it ended up being perfect for this build because obviously I want Spirit of the Swarm. That is important because if you don't have a class item with Swarm, you can just use Swarmers, which is the legs. And then Necrotic just adds to this because like I said, I'm already using a triple melee and I'm going to have my melees a lot. So I'm just getting free extra, poison damage over time with this class item. So I highly recommend getting this class item if you already have it. Awesome. You will enjoy this build. It'll be super fun. But like I said, it's not a must. You can just use the exotic legs, which is Swarmers, which for the most part is going to do the same thing. You do not have to have the class item. All right, so now I'm going to jump into all my mods that I was using with this specific build. Also, like I've been doing with all these build videos, I will put a dim link to my build in the comments. It'll be the pinned comment. So if you want to just, copy my build straight from dim, you can do that. The only thing it doesn't copy, the artifact can't be changed by loadouts for some weird reason. So you do need to do that yourself. So remember that. But yeah, I will have a dim link. But anyways, right into my armor. Helmet first. So for my helmet, I was using two harmonic siphons and I was using hands-on, gain bonus super energy on melee kills. You could also go ashes to assets. I was kind of cycling between the two. They're the same thing, same concept. It just depends on, you know, what you're throwing more often, which surprisingly, you do have your melees almost as often as your grenades here because of Transcendence, because you will have, you know, 3 melees constantly recharging when you pop Transcendence. So I think that's why I was going hands-on instead of ashes to assets, but you could go either or. Moving on to my arms, I was using Focusing Strike, grants class ability energy when you cause damage with a powered melee attack. And I was using Momentum Transfer, causes damage with a grenade, reduces your melee cooldown. So again, just to get more abilities more frequently by, you know, using abilities. And then I had Harmonic Loader on because I'm using a strand weapon, but that's not necessary. You could honestly probably take off the loader and put on another one of the Focusing Strike or Momentum Transfer if you really wanted to. Moving on to my chest piece, I was using 2 strand reserves just so that I had as much trace rifle ammo as I could have, and a resist, solar resist. Depends on what I'm playing, but some things, you know, have more solar damage, some more arc. Those are the 2 I pretty much always have a resist for. Void and the other, and Void and strand and stasis aren't very important. Moving on to my legs, I was using Insulation, reduces class ability cooldown each time you pick up an Orb of Power. 1 strand Scav, because again, strand weapon. And Invigoration, reduces melee cooldown each time you pick up an Orb of Power. Again, you could run 2 of the same mod if you really wanted to here. You could also get rid of Scavs. You don't have to use Scavs. You could also, you know, use something else here as well. That's just what I was using. And then lastly, on my class item, I was using Outreach, reduces melee cooldown when using your class ability. So again, using your class ability like crazy. It's a huge part of this build. You're constantly spamming it. So this just gives you your melee. I think I have 2 of those on. Yes, I do. And then I was using Utility Kickstart. When your class ability energy is fully expended, your armor charge is consumed and you gain class ability energy for each armor charge used. So again, make sure you're picking up orbs constantly. And every time you use your class ability, bam, free class ability energy. Easy peasy. So yeah, that's pretty much the whole build. That's my armor. Those are my weapons, class perks, fragments, everything. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. That's the build. I've been having a lot of fun with it. I think this season has one of the best artifacts we've ever seen in terms of just being able to mess with different elements, because it's not a lot of seasons in the past were just restrictive to one element, like solar season, arc season, void season, right? This season doesn't feel like that. This season initially seemed like, oh, it was just an arc season, but it's not. There's tons of stuff to build into arc. There's now tons of stuff to build into strand. Obviously, it took until part 3 of this episode. And then there's a lot of void stuff in there as well, which doesn't force you to play void, but if you play void, it just adds into it. So, you know, realistically, you can make builds off of 3 completely different elements, and you could also use other subclasses as well while using, like I said, some of the void stuff, some of the arc stuff because of arc perks, and strand stuff because of strand perks on weapons. So yeah, it's really, really awesome. This is a really fun season in terms of being able to come up with fun builds. And I'm looking forward to the dungeon thing that comes out. I think it's like next week or 2 weeks. I can't remember. Where the dungeons have like contest mode and new loot and stuff like that. So I'm looking forward to mess with some of these builds. But yeah, this build is really fun. I kind of talked about it while going through stuff, but you really are unkillable. And as you can see, like in the actual gameplay, when I was doing the Ghosts of the Deep opening, I was purposefully not shooting the butterflies. If you didn't notice the moths, like I was letting them hit me just to kind of showcase how strong this build is. Like nothing really hurts. You have Devour, you have Woven Mail, you have 100 Resilience. You're just really, really strong. So yeah, you're very, very tanky. I would love to show off the Ekthar encounter with this build, but that would require me getting there for the actual video content, which is I'm just too lazy. But it would be the same thing. Pretty much unkillable. Very, very strong build. But yeah, I mean, that's pretty much it. If you guys have any suggestions for this build, feel free to let me know in the comments. I would love to try anything else. Or if you have any build suggestions out there that you would love to see me take for a spin and maybe even make a video on, again, leave it in the comments. Or lastly, if you just have a very specific thing that you would like to see me build into to try to come up with an awesome build, just let me know. Whether it's, you know, building off of a specific exotic that has synergy with a class or some of the artifact mods, whether it's a weapon or exotic armor for any character. I play all 3 characters, and I'm willing to try anything. Like I said, just let me know. I'm always looking for more things to mess with. I've also been streaming a ton. Every single time during the stream, I've been letting people come up with suggestions. Like I said, if it's a specific exotic weapon or a specific exotic armor piece to build off of. We have been just kind of messing around, doing stuff. But yeah, we have plenty more months left in this season, so I will be making a lot more build videos in the future. So thank you guys for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I hope you have a great rest of your day, and I'll see you later. Peace.